I made a quick array, P hotels, just to designate its PHP hotels, and then S hotels is going to be Smarty hotels, just to try not to confuse people. That it's a bit confusing, I guess. We're going to be setting in the second line the actual variable for Smarty. You'll see the assignment of assign and then the hotels for Smarty, which that's the actual variable name. And then make sure when you're doing that you don't actually put in the $sign. It already knows that it's a variable. You don't need to tell it that again. And then P hotels is the content that we're assigning to that variable S hotels. And then the last step is just call your template up, and that's where all the work happens. Also with variables, there's a reserve tree with Smarty. It's actually really handy. I used to have to I used to think I had to assign, if I'm passing like a post variable over or something, or request from a query string, assign it within it and then pass it over when I display. Well, it's actually built in right within the Smarty templating. So if you want your PHP session ID, you can call it up like that. Your post request cookies from PHP, as you normally see in PHP. And then if there's a special variable tree called section. I'm going to show you that in a few seconds. It's basically how you loop through stuff. So in this example, the section called hotel, you could see the total items of array with that. So nothing's ambiguous. It's all really straightforward. So that definitely helps people out. So we're going to check out a quick example. This isn't going to be anything pretty. It's just to show you. Well, this will just show you a pretty much standard output of a website, and then I'll get into how I created that. Go Firefox. Let's see if I can bump that up a little. Okay, that's good enough. So the top line, I'm printing each value, and you're going to see I just pretty much call each array value individually, 0, 1, 2. In the second instance, I'm actually using Smarty section to loop through the values of the array for me, which is obviously a lot less boring in my opinion, and it's going to be quicker. Your code's going to be smaller, your template's going to be smaller. You're not going to have to worry about defining your own loop to do things. It's all built in for you. So let me get back to the presentation. All right, so here's section and array items. The top one obviously is how we originally called it, 0, 1 from S hotels, which is the Smarty array. So in my example, to loop through an array, you can use the section, section in Smarty. So the section name, we just call it hotel, and the loop is the data that you pulled through. So the S hotels is the array that we pulled through from the PHP file originally, and then you just call the hotel within the brackets for S hotels, and that the name is basically just the loop iteration. That's all it really is. You can name it like iteration, even if it's less confusing for you. Other interesting uses of section are the total, which I showed you earlier, row number. You can actually do if then else within the loop, which is kind of nice. That saves you a couple extra lines that you normally have to include. So if there are no hotels, show us there's no hotels. Don't make me have to type another 4 lines of PHP just to output that. All right, about configuration files. Like I said earlier, they're going to define you to use the static variables that you may need to define in any program. The stuff that you're going to have to go back to time and time again. If you're making one template and you copy paste those files over, just change the variables in the configuration file. Don't worry about the actual application code. Don't worry about anything else because it's all statically defined. The actual loading of configuration files is pretty much trivial. Config load, the file name, and then the section. Like I was saying before, it looks like a WinINI file pretty much. It's really straightforward with everything that they do, which is kind of nice, especially for the beginner programmer if they want to keep it. Matt.
Before you move on from the code, does Smarty have a concept of functions?
Well, yeah, I'm actually getting into quite a few examples of functions, and I'll show you how to make a function function yourself. But thank you for asking. So when we actually want to call a value from the configuration file, you can either toss inside of the delimiters 2 pound symbols around the variable name, or we can just call through the Smarty reserve tree .config and then the variable that you had. And my room was actually pretty cheap, so that was kind of cool. But the same results come out either way you do it. There's no benefit to either one, except one's obviously shorter than the other. Okay, mid-presentation security note, since it's fun. Smarty does allow the embedding of PHP within the template if the security features are turned off. This is off by default. So if you are sharing your template files with someone you're not familiar with, make sure you check that code over, or you can actually turn Smarty into safe mode. One of the main features of Smarty, like I was talking about before, is it won't let the designers break the code, but only if you don't let them. So if you aren't totally sure about their qualifications as a PHP programmer, I wouldn't advise that, letting them do that. But from what I've seen, at least, there's really no reason that you would ever have to start invoking PHP within the template, because the whole point is to separate the two layers. It's just kind of there in case, I have no idea. But it's there for you if you need it. All right, so let's get into the actual template files. .dpl is the standard extension for the templates in Smarty. The data assigned to your instance of Smarty is now able to be used constructively within the template, and the template has built-in variable modifiers. These are pretty much just, a lot of these actually kind of exist in PHP to begin with, but the thing that people keep asking me is, isn't this redundant? Why do we do it in here? Well, the point is that you're separating the layers. So if you want that equality to exist, you have to create it in Smarty. So that's why they've built in a ton of variable modifiers and a ton of functions to do the things that you normally do. So truncation of text, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of these actually. Indentation of text, stripping tags, word wrapping, string replacement, capitalization, date forming, counting characters. You can count words, lowercase stuff, new line to break tag. There's just a laundry list of them. So here's the first example I have of variable modifiers. Truncation. The difference between just something you're making and something that's already been made is the fact that people think of pretty cool stuff that you probably wouldn't think of. When I used to code my own presentation layer stuff, when I made the function for it, I wouldn't think of, well, you know what? Instead of copying over that MySQL database into two separate sections, one for like the preview and one for the body of the text, instead here we do the exact same thing with the truncation. So in the first example, it's pretty straightforward. It uses pipes just like Unix, so you're taking the data that you have and piping it through to the actual function that you're running on it. So in the first example, you'll truncate at the 210th character, but also end at the end of a word, so as not to cut off anything. Joke. Thank you. Obviously that's important. So if you're having a news site, you don't want to see /. Like telling you about something with Linux and start saying Linus Torvald and then offend everyone when you cut off half of his cool name. So that's one of that's actually the default, that it won't cut off, that it won't truncate anything. The handy one that a lot of people seem to be using with it is same example of cutting off the word length, but in this instance, what we're going to be doing, you can actually add whatever you want to the end of the string. So you can add an ellipsis like most people do to lead into the rest of the article. If you have some really cool thing, like a tag or something, you add it at the end of everything you do, toss it in there, and it'll truncate and add that at the end. Matt?
How do you truncate without S2 cut off in the middle of a word if necessary?
Just based on the function itself, it goes through and makes sure that what it's truncating, like even A counts as a word when you do the count words.
If I want to cut off at the 210th character, no matter what.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually the next point. Thank you for bringing that up. If you add :true after the string that you have of what you want to end it with, at the end of the modifier statement, you will truncate at the exact character. So people like Matt that want to ruin their blog entries can go ahead and do it. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. Truncation.
Awesome.
All right, stripping tags, another thing that a lot of people obviously have to use. They don't want all those kids pasting those iframes and shit, come on. So we take our blog content, pipe it through to the strip tags, and by default, it's actually going to include a space any place that you removed, because when you do the replace, you obviously have to replace it with something, whether that's white space or a no space itself, whatever. By default, it actually gives you a single white space. I don't know why, so I'd recommend using a colon false at the end. So as you can see, it's going to remove anything with the greater and lesser symbols around it. So font color, goodbye font color, goodbye iframes, goodbye JavaScript. No one should use JavaScript in the first place, whatever. So there you go. A third example. Yes, Matt?
I have one other question on the previous slide.
Previous slide.
It says it essentially removes anything with the brackets.
Yeah.
What if you actually want to keep brackets in there?
Some brackets, not all.
Yeah.
Make some exceptions. Do literals for it?
Yeah, you could do literals. That is true. Thank you, Muchimus. What I'd recommend doing is making your own plugin, which I'll actually show you how to do. Because, I mean, for PHP programmers, this stuff is really trivial. So to make something that's, going to do a regex on it, it would take no time at all to make your own. So third example, word wrapping. Everyone likes word wrapping. This is less because I'm impressed by these variable modifiers, and more just to show you that everything that you would need on a basic website's built in. You don't really need for a lot, and what you do need for, like I said, it's plug-in, it's extensible, it's really easy to do. So in this example, just like the truncation, it's going to wrap to the nearest 10th character, so the whole word nearest to the 10th character, and wrap using new line. You can change that to a break tag. You can change that to a break tag with the / which is HTML compliant. You probably want to do that these days. End it with whatever you want. New an HR tag, whatever. If you add true at the end of the statement, it's going to wrap to the exact character, like our truncate variable modifier. So quick notes on variable modifiers. You can combine any number of them using pipes. So say you have your blog content, pipe it through the truncation, pipe it through to the strip tags, pipe it through. So you don't have to have multiple lines in your template, just one line piping through. And you can actually combine them with the Smarty functions also. And this is a direct example for the Smarty docs, which are amazing. That's the only thing you really need for resources. So I'm actually going to show you HTML table in a second. But this is basically just an example. You're going to loop through the myvar data, whatever the data that may be, and then you pipe it through, and you're going to truncate at the 40th character, and then add an ellipsis at the end. And so when you're doing your table, say you have the table rows going on, each table row is only going to have that little synopsis of whatever content you have. So Smarty functions, as Matt was wondering about, HTML table is obviously one of the more useful ones, since a lot of people use tables for their data, showing data. This function has an asinine amount of complexity to it. It takes like a whole page just to see all the attributes you can actually assign to the table, and just think how much space you're saving not having to type all the tr tags, all the td tag, all the tr. Why waste your time? So you can do stuff. Here's just quick examples. Table attribute of border equals 0, pretty standard, and columns equal 4. The data it's looping through is called the data variable. So in this example, we loop through an array of data, and we loop through after the 4th column to a new row. So in the first table cell, let's say array 0, second data cell array 1, third data cell array 2, and fourth data cell array 3. And then it's going to drop down to a new row, and then go over and over and over. So this is a really quick way just to if you have that list of people's names, emails, and birth dates, social security numbers, whatever, you can loop through it and put that table online for your friends. This is a lot cleaner than making your own loops to deal with tableizing. Yeah, it's a word. Data and no, it's not. Yeah, tableizing. This is actually being submitted by me to. No, it's not. So we're gonna go through this data a lot faster than it would be to make our own stupid function to do this. Like I said, why waste the time? If you're programming software, you obviously have something more important to do than make a loop to cycle through table data. So more on Smarty functions, HTML options. So let's say we have two arrays. One array has values. You'd normally call these values when you're going through your PHP to see what people selected, 1 to 3. and the other has hotel names we defined earlier. So we're going to make our selection, which is, this is exactly